So welcome. I am just so honored to have the most amazing guest with me today, Kalli. She just shares the most incredible story of triumph over tragedy, amazing success story through pranic healing. And her story is just so beautiful and so unique and so heartwarming. And I'm just so glad to have you here with us today, Kalli. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So if you want to just share with everybody what got you to seek out pranic healing. I don't even think I remembered asking you how you even found pranic healing or me, but anyway, share that because I don't remember.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again for having me. I'm super grateful to be here and hope that my journey will resonate with someone who's listening today. Um, so I found pranic healing after my son tragically and unexpectedly passed. He was 13 months old and he passed in his sleep. We were not given a reason why. It was sudden, it was unexpected. And I was, as I'm sure any parent could imagine, devastated. I was at a loss for what to do or where to go. I felt like there was not really, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I felt hopeless. And it was during the pandemic. He died April 8th of 2020. So just about a month after the pandemic really took full effect here in the United States and especially in Florida. So we were shut down at the time. At the time, there was lots of news media, don't go to the hospital. There was no therapy sessions available. There was no one was coming to our home to help us. And it really was like the strange, bizarre new world. And I felt lost and I felt like I didn't know what to do. And
I
what
think
I did.
of everything, it's a huge tragedy anyway, but that combined with being in a lockdown and not being able to get the help you need or have people reaching out or even just to have friends and family come over, I mean, that must have just compounded it on a level like no other, right?
Yeah, there were it was definitely unique, I think is the best way to experience. And anyone who lost a loved one especially during the early days of COVID can relate to, we weren't allowed in the hospital with our son as they were doing life-saving measures. We weren't permitted to have anybody come and view his body afterwards. No one was recommending doing any funerals or memorial services at the time. I mean, all the things you just described. So not that I knew how to deal with it anyways, but on top of it, there was no advice, there was no guidance, there was no, you put this foot in front of the next. And this is kind of how we work through tragedy and loss. It felt at the time like the whole world really didn't have a solution. And so here I was, this little fish in this pond, and I didn't know what to do except for that I knew that I needed some type of, I needed help. I needed help desperately. I didn't know what kind of help I needed. I didn't know how I was going to get that help. I didn't know. And so I did the only thing that I could think of at the time. And I cried into my cell phone and I said, just help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. And miraculously, your Pranic Healing Center came up on my Google search out of nowhere. And please excuse me. And it was really life-changing and miraculous. And I feel like it was a divine intervention for me because I really needed help and I didn't know what pranic healing was. And I had no idea how it could help me, but I was lost. And so I called. So I called you.
And I still remember that very, very first conversation we had. I just remember thinking you had the most beautiful name. And I think it was the first thing I said when I said, what is your name? And you said, Callison. And I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful name. And I remembered me, you sharing your story with me, and just, I mean, it took my breath away. And I still remember that very first session. And I think we had a call afterwards because that was a remote session. And literally the tone in your voice from the beginning when we did our introductory call to when I spoke to you afterwards, it was just such a profound shift, even in just one session. I don't know if you just want to share how that process was for you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was life-changing. It really was life-changing. So at the time that I called you, right, like as I just described, I didn't know what I was doing or what I was seeking or how I was going to get there. I think I probably even said to you on the phone when we initially spoke, I don't even know, I don't know what this is. I don't know how it works. And I think what you shared with me was that you were going to help me. You were going to help. What I heard, and again, I was like buried in grief, but what I heard was, we can help take the edge off. We can help take the edge off. And I was in so much pain and agony, and I was wrestling with so much guilt and sadness and shame and unknowing and not having answers. And I mean, it's a life-shifting, life-changing experience that I had just gone through. And I was still very much in shock. This was only about 3 weeks after my son had passed. So very quickly after he passed. And so I had no idea what to expect. You said you could help me take the edge off. And then I remember hearing, and you don't have to do anything, Kalli, just try to relax. And that was all my little tiny brain could handle at the time, which was enough for me. At the time, I personally can tell you, I had no idea what a chakra was. I didn't have a personal relationship with a God or a higher power. I had no relationship to angels or to any spiritual beings. I no spiritual relationship whatsoever, and certainly no energetic relationship with my body or with my energy at the time. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was willing to do anything. So I laid down and I said, please help me. Please help me. I am willing. Please help me. And what I remember from that very first session is that I could feel what I can only describe as ropes coming out of my throat. Like I remember I was laying on my bed at the time and just feeling like ropes coming out of my throat, and I was like doing like this, and I was like, am I losing my mind? What's happening? Like I had never experienced the feeling that I was experiencing, and I really thought that perhaps I was losing it. I felt it coming out of what I know now is my solar plexus, front solar plexus. I felt what felt like ropes coming out of my solar plexus, and it was amazing. It was amazing, and I didn't know what it was, and it didn't make sense. I just knew that I started to feel better.
And I think that's key. And I love the fact that I think you were in such a space of, you were so vulnerable, you were so consumed with grief. The effort on your part was literally just to relax. And I think you just had that faith that I don't know what I'm going to be feeling or experiencing, but I just need help. And you were very receptive right from the beginning. And even with having no idea about all of this, the fact that you were just there and you needed the help and you felt so much better afterwards, I think on your part was the fact that you were that vulnerable that you just needed something. And I think when you're in that space, to just be able to relax, even that can be a challenge. And that's what I love about the work, is it's so gentle, it's so subtle. There was not a lot required of you to be involved in the process. You were literally able to just lie back and receive, and receive healing.
And it was beautiful. And in that very first session, again, I was like 3 weeks out from my son passing. My entire world had it exploded. Sitting down for an hour was really not attainable for me. And luckily, that was okay. Like I told you, I said, I think I sat for like 20 minutes and then I couldn't sit anymore. And you said, that's fine. That's fine. We're connected. You're fine. Just try to be calm and be quiet, you know, and I'll let you know when I'm done. And so that's what I did. I sat and I read and when the session was over, I felt like a little weight had been lifted. Like I felt like the pressure of the gravity of my situation was not was lessened. So I still felt all the feelings of real grief that you feel, right? I still felt the shame and I felt the guilt and I felt the fear and the unknowing and what's going to happen next and the regret over, you know, what it was supposed to be like and how it's not going to be. I still felt all of that stuff, but the gravity, the weight of it was lessened enough to where I felt like I could breathe a little bit more easy and really at no effort of my own. So it just really was an amazing life-changing session. I knew after I had my very first session, I knew that this was going to be the road for me.
Absolutely. And I think what you describe, so I've heard it so many times with many different clients. They talk about the weight of the grief. They feel like literally there's a pressure on their chest, that is a tangible heaviness that's there, where you almost just feel like you're being suffocated. You can't take that breath in. There really is a weight to grief. And as you said, you know, it's not removing all those feelings. It's not interfering with the grief process, which is a very natural and vital process to go through the different phases of grief, but to just lessen that pressure, lessen that load, give you that space to just be able to breathe and feel less overwhelmed, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more centered. Even mentally, just to have some of the weight of that released, because I remembered with another client where she spoke very clearly about grief brain, where you actually feel like your brain doesn't want to work. And even the most simple decisions or tasks can feel so monumental because there's literally no capacity for those thought processes, you know, just because of everything that's there. So I love how you described it was just that gentle lifting and release of that pressure, which is so lovely. Do you remember how many sessions we did initially, just to kind of get you through that patch?
Yeah, so I think we did about 3 sessions initially, and then I took a little bit of a hiatus, and then luckily you came back in November, and you just texted me and you're like, hey, how are you doing? And I was like, okay, that's it. And then it was like full on running from there. And so in the beginning, I think we did 3 sessions,
and that's
which
really thing that, I mean, it was, I actually felt like it was longer, but just described. So we had that amazing response after the first session. Where were you after the third session before you felt okay enough just to kind of let that integrate?
So by the 3rd session, I had gotten to a place. So right after he passed, there was just so much shock, right? There was so much shock. There was, what do we do? How do we do this? How do we go on with our lives? Everything we thought, all the plans that we had are no longer available. And how do we get through this? And what do we do? I have a daughter too. At the time, she was 3. You know, how do we show up for her? Her birthday was coming up. She's September baby. So she was about to celebrate a birthday. She was going to be 4. How am I going to show up for her when I'm in so much pain? So what I remember from those first couple of sessions is what it did for me is allow me to show up for my daughter, which was really what I needed to do at that time. Like, because it became a lot about how do we help facilitate and help usher her through this process. Also, she may be little, she may be young, but she is also grieving, and it really got me out of myself and available for her, to show up for her despite all the pain that I was going through, and show her that there was an opportunity to get a little bit better. So that's what I remember as I read through my journals of that period of time, is just feeling calm enough to be thoughtful of her instead of thoughtful of me and my pain.
That's amazing. That is just fantastic. So I think that's a perfect point to finish up this session. Thank you for sharing your story. You know, it's just amazing the people that I've met along the way. And, you know, each person I interact with, I'm learning, I'm growing. And just to be able to share that with other people that are struggling, that are suffering, that just feel like there's no hope, that are really just feeling so isolated and overwhelmed. Pranic healing has changed lives in ways I could never even imagine. And just to be involved with the work, I'm just so grateful, and it gets me to meet awesome people like you. So thank you. I truly thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful too.